and I'm really happy with how things have progressed. We did a nice capital raise a few months ago, oversubscribed. We're coming back to the market this week, and we've already going to pass through the amount we wanted to raise in one day. So that tells us that our shareholders are happy, the market's happy. We built a fantastic team. Our projects are really good. In 2021, we're going to enter that year with great projects and a full bank account to go after and explore those projects. And that's what our shareholders want to see.
Thanks for tuning into the video today. I had the pleasure of talking with Jon Bey, the CEO of Standard Uranium, as well as Neil McCallum, Standard Uranium's Vice President of Exploration, and also Sean Hillacre, their project manager and project geologist. I have the three of them in today to discuss some of the recent results, their phase 1 drilling program at their Davidson River project, as well as some of the initial results from their Gunnar Project that they just acquired. Standard Uranium has come a long way in 5 months. I do ask Jon about that and how he sees the progress of the company, coming from an IPO in May to the point now where they're on their second prospectus financing in the market and receiving strong support. So I hope you enjoy the video. If it is something that you find helpful or useful, we always appreciate you clicking like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell down below. It is, as always, a bit of a longer interview, so we will provide you timestamps as well. So if there's a certain topic that catches your interest, don't be shy to scroll down in the description and click on the timestamps. So with that, enjoy the video and take care. All right, so welcome, gentlemen. Great to have you on the show today. We're going to be talking Standard Uranium, and joining us first for back on the show is Jon Bey, CEO. How you doing, Jon? I think you're joining us from Vancouver today.
I'm doing quite well. Yeah, nice to be back with you, John. I am in Vancouver. It's October 1st, gorgeous weather here, except for a little bit of smoke coming up from the U.S. But other than that, great start to October, and really looking forward to sharing more of our story with you and your listeners.
Great. And I know you're busy. Obviously you recently announced a raise, and we'll get into that later, but I appreciate, taking the time out of your busy days. I'm sure, the phones have been busy for you today. Neil McCallum, Vice President of Exploration and Director at Standard Uranium, again, coming back. Neil did our last interview, a bit of a technical podcast. So Neil, it's nice to have you back as well, joining us from the nation's capital. How you doing today?
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm good, thanks. Yeah, glad to be chatting about the project again. I'm more excited than I was last time about it, so looking forward to getting into the details.
Right on. And new to the show for everyone, introducing Sean Hillacre. Sean is the project manager and project geologist at Standard Uranium. Sean, really nice to have you on. And it's weird, it's the first time I've ever seen you in a video without 1,000 black flies or mosquitoes flying in front of the camera. So nice change.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. It's a pleasure to be on with you guys today.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's get right into it. And John, I want to start with you. I think it's before we dive maybe too much into the recent results, let's back up a little bit and look at on a larger scale for the last 5 months. The last time we had you on, it was May. You recently IPO'd the company. Since then, you've gone on to do a raise. You started out at $3 million. That was upsized significantly to $4.5 million. So you were able to raise a lot of money for the company. Standard Uranium has gone on to do a successful phase 1 drill program. You've added properties to the portfolio, and you already have some encouraging results from those properties. Standard Uranium is now being covered. It has analyst coverage from Red Cloud. Derek McPherson has initiated coverage. No price targets or a buy rating yet, but I think his words were, Standard Uranium is set up for exploration success. So that's got to feel good. And then obviously, we'll talk about this later, the new raise that you just announced yesterday. So, walk us through how you think the last 5 months have gone and your thoughts about where you are today.
Yeah, thanks for that intro, John. 2020 has been a fantastic year for Standard Uranium, our team, and our shareholders. As you mentioned, we had 3 main goals for the company in 2020. The first one was to complete our public listing. We did that in May 4th. Our next goal was to raise money. The goal was to go out and raise $3 million to help us with our exploration. Support in the market was extremely strong, so we upsized it twice and closed on $4.5 million. And the third thing we wanted to accomplish was a drill program at our flagship Davidson River project. We went right ahead into that. The plan was to do 5,000 meters and start that in July. As we all know, COVID happened, and Saskatchewan had an outbreak in the far north where we operate. So we're delayed by a month, but we're really happy to announce that we did get it started in August and completed on time and on budget. And there were no COVID outbreaks. And I want to thank Neil McCallum and our team for the work they did with an excellent COVID plan, including all the staff and team at Big Bear and all the drillers and helicopter team that all participated, and really did an excellent job of ensuring COVID didn't come to our camp and we were able to complete our drill program. So as we complete 2020, you announced we are doing another capital raise. We're getting strong support from the market following our recent drill program. We announced yesterday that we're doing a $3 million raise, and more is 24 hours later, it's almost complete. So expect a quick announcement to the market that we've closed this financing and moving on to continue our exploration program. And on top of that, we moved up to our Gunnar Project in the northern part of Saskatchewan. We sent a team up there right after our Davidson River program closed down to do some initial work, and the results were very impressive, and I'll let my geologist speak to that. But going into 2021, we're going to end 2020 with probably $5 million cash in the bank, two really exciting projects and programs to explore both of those in the early parts of 2021. So it's shaping up for another great year for Standard Uranium and our shareholders.
Yeah, and I definitely want to extend kudos to the team. The fact that you were able to complete phase 1 drilling in an area that had been, a previous COVID hotspot, on budget, on time, that is definitely a testament to the whole team. So I'm sure, I can speak for all the shareholders that are very appreciative to the work that went into that and the planning, and that's just great to see. So you've already touched on it, John, but one of my next questions was just to walk shareholders through your thought process or your strategy. You're raising $3 million now. That was just announced yesterday. Walk us through, why now, why $3 million, and maybe if you can speak to where that $3 million is expected to be allocated.
Sure. So that's a good question, John. We completed our AGM this week as well. I'm happy to announce everything at the AGM was passed smoothly. And we had a board meeting following that where we talked about our exploration programs for 2021. We have allocated roughly 2 sets of money. The first one to Davidson River. We'd like to do a follow-up 5,000 meter drill program, which is roughly with a budget of $2 million. And we're looking to spend probably about $700,000 at our Gunnar Project. That would be some ground gravity in January, followed by an initial small drill program, probably getting started in March. So that's a $2.7 million budget. We currently have $2 million in the bank right now. We wanted to raise money while we had money, so we don't come across as raising while we're desperate. So we want to end the year with $5 million in the bank, with about 2.7 earmarked for drilling in the first quarter of 2021. And we believe results off that drilling will set us up nicely for the capital raises and for the summer drilling.
Right on. And are you happy, John? I know it's always a balance, money, capitalizing the company, and dilution. Are you happy with where the share count's at right now, based on the progress the company's made to date? Is that, is that in line with what your expectations and plans?
Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm very happy, actually. We're right on target and right where we want it to be. We're sort of following along, hitting all our milestones and following the plan just as we laid it out. You asked, should we take $3 million or more? We decided to do this raise at the same terms as the raise we did a few months ago. Our share price, we announced it was around 23. We're probably at cents today, and we anticipate, we could take more. We're going to stick to right around 3 to 3.5 million and not dilute these share prices, because we believe the end of 2020 is going to be strong, and early into 2021, we're going to have further success with our drill program, and we anticipate our share price going up higher. So we'd like to raise funds at a high valuation on our next raise.
Okay, and John, one of the good things about Standard Uranium has been your institutional support. I know, in previous interviews that we've had you on, and others you've mentioned, like, you have some of the top uranium focused funds, or the support of the top uranium focused funds in the world. are you seeing that continued institutional support in this raise? Or if can you speak to that at all?
I can, yeah. So once again, I'm going to announce, I think it was in our news release, that we have partnered with Red Cloud. Red Cloud is leading the syndicate on this capital raise. They bring in a lot of the institutional investors on the flow-through side. And we do have very strong support from the uranium funds that have supported us in our previous raises. And on top of that, we're bringing Canaccord Security into the mix in the syndicate, primarily to get more retail. I think one of the things we're finding, it's fantastic to have strong institutional shareholders, and we have, more than 60% of our shareholders are institutions or high net worth individuals or family offices, but they don't tend to do a lot of trading. So in order to increase our liquidity, get more trading, we wanted to really focus on getting retail shareholders involved. And that's why one of the reasons we brought Canaccord into the mix, and they are performing very well in this current capital raise.
Oh, that's great to hear. And yeah, the liquidity, I guess, has been one area where you could always improve. So I'm sure with this another prospectus financing that, that there will be a little bit more liquidity in the market. And that's obviously a good thing for everybody involved, whether you're trading or not. It's just that much easier to acquire shares or sell when you need. One quick question too, John, because Standard Uranium is a relatively new company, compared to a lot of the other companies out there that have been public for a while. You are relatively new to the space, certainly on the public side anyway. Can you comment on some of the market awareness activities you've done to date? Are you happy with how that process has gone? And are you seeing results, for example, from those, those activities that are in, favorable to what you were looking for?
Yeah, so very good point. We started the company 2 years ago as a private company, and we spent the first 2 years sort of marketing privately, and that was involving going to trade shows and doing the road shows, trying to raise funds. After we went public in May, the plan was to continue to do that, but on top of that, really increase our outreach, and then sort of COVID happened. So it's kind of slowed down the plans of being out to all the conferences, networking, and so forth. So we've really gone to an online process. One of the things we did was to bring our filmmaking and media and social media stuff in-house and do it all ourselves. That gives us complete control and allowed us to get our own people on site to our projects and really start to do something which is quite unique, I believe, which gives sort of a behind-the-scenes look at what a drill program is like, and talk to the geologists on site and get their own take on things and really share that socially. And we're getting great response from the market, and we anticipate that's going to lead to further opportunities for shareholders to get involved with Standard Uranium. We still believe strongly in marketing internationally, and we're doing webinars with companies like yourself, and we use in the US, we've partnered with Ambest for the last year. Red Cloud does a lot of webinars with us, and we're really trying to get our message out there through social media and online. And we anticipate when COVID slows down and I'm able to get back on the road and do conferences and shows, and that'll be happening. We're strong believers in that, marketing and sharing the story. Would like to be back into Europe, but at this point it's just not happening. It's really sad that the World Nuclear Show, which is in September every year, we had to pass on that, as did everyone. But it's really a great place for us to go face to face with all the fund managers and all the institutions and high networks that are there. So hopefully next September we're back for that.
Yeah, fingers crossed for 2021. And yeah, John, it's a good point you brought up earlier. I want to give your team kudos. And I've heard so much positive things about the videos that you've done online, sharing, on site at the drilling rigs and stuff. I think the general consensus have been people were really happy with how you've been updating shareholders, and that was really well received. So that was a great idea, and kudos to that as well. So let's move into the results then. And Sean, I just want to start with you because you're newer to the group. This is the first time we've had you on. Maybe we could get you to introduce yourself and just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you think that you're adding value to the team. The efforts at Davidson River and Gunnar Project, for example.
Yeah, sure. Well, my name is Sean Hillacre. I am the project manager and geologist at the Standard Uranium. My previous experience largely consists of uranium exploration in the Southwest Athabasca Basin. So I was brought on with Next Gen Energy in 2014, pretty much immediately post discovery at the Arrow deposit. And then I went back, received my undergraduate degree in 2015 from the University of Saskatchewan. And then out of school, Next Gen brought me on full time. And I worked for the last 5 years as part of that team, kind of progressing the Arrow deposit through from discovery through delineation into feasibility studies. And during that time, I completed my master's graduate studies on the Arrow deposit, focusing on structural controls on mineralization and integrating that with mineral paragenesis and geochronology as well. So really great opportunity for me to be a part of that team and get exposure, working from discovery through delineation to feasibility stage. So learned a lot, tremendous amount, exposed to a lot of different things that way. And then not only that, but being able to be involved with spearheading the research on these southwestern Athabasca uranium deposits. They're relatively poorly understood compared to your classic east side unconformity related uranium deposits. So, being involved with that and, publishing some of the first papers on the area on an economic deposit such as Arrow. It's a beautiful deposit. So I feel like my integration of academic studies and industry experience will be, a pretty valuable asset to the Standard team coming in and looking for some of these high-grade basement-hosted uranium deposits. So very excited to be part of the team and looking forward to keep drilling and hopefully vectoring on something big.
Yeah, and that's great, Sean. That's it's interesting experience from both the on-site experience at the drill rig and the academic side. That's an interesting mix, and I'm sure that's made you very familiar with the rocks there to a degree that probably few others are. And let's hope you've done the from start from basically the discovery hole or shortly thereafter to feasibility study on Arrow. Let's hope that you get to do the same thing at Standard Uranium. Take two, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different things involved in progressing a deposit. So, I have a pretty good wealth of knowledge to draw on to help push the company forward and hopefully progress something through to feasibility as well.
Yeah. Okay, so the company, phase one drilling is done. So let's talk about that, the results of the phase one drilling and how happy you are. And I know one of the big goals of the phase one drilling program, aside from obviously, hitting uranium, which you didn't do, but let's be honest, the chances of that on a property that had never been drilled were incredibly slim. So I think, expectations were not that that wasn't going to happen. But one of the big things I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, was to prove that the rocks on the western side of the Clearwater domain look very similar or kind of have the same structural characteristics as the rocks on the eastern side in the Patterson Lake corridor, where we know we have deposits, high grade, large deposits like Arrow and Triple R. So walk us through, how the results sort of reflect that hypothesis, if you can.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Like the main goal of the program was to essentially confirm the airborne geophysics, just making sure that those rocks that we intercept in the drill hole can explain those airborne conductors, because that doesn't always happen, especially on a first pass drill program. Even that goal is not always attained. So we know from our first pass drill hole that this is a fairly significant wide conductive corridor that possibly represents a fairly large scale structure. So yeah, definitely our first pass drill program was successful in that regard. And certainly the rocks, Sean can speak to it more specifically in terms of what he's observed on the eastern side, but yeah, definitely that key ingredient of the graphite sulfide in the basement has definitely been achieved.
Okay, so let's focus on that term ingredients. I know, Neil, last time you and I talked, we talked about the ingredients that you need to get a uranium deposit, and I believe the two of the key ingredients are structurally, you need the breakup, you need the shear zones, fault zones, and then the other part being the the graphite and sulfide rocks. So this is to confirm that you did in fact find those two key ingredients.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So that's obviously got to be a positive. Sean, from your standpoint, the rocks that you saw in the phase 1 drill program, do they compare favorably to what you would have seen at Arrow?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same basement domain, obviously, that the Patterson Lake corridor lies within. It's the Taltson domain. These rocks are upwards of 2 billion years old. So we're seeing these long-lived, reused structures in the basement. We've seen significant intersections in multiple drill holes all the way along the Warrior Trend. So very favorable that way. We're seeing similar basement rock types in general. And then we're seeing these large reactivated structures in the basement, which is a great sign, coupled with, some hydrothermal alteration. And so similar rock types, similar structures. So definitely some promising results to follow up on with phase 2 and 3.
And were you able to actually intersect the conductor, the conductive anomaly that had been modeled with geophysics? Did the drilling actually intersect that conductor?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Neil said, we've proved out that the conductor is there. We drilled all along the Warrior Trend, and we've intersected these conductive structures and conductive rocks, lots of sulphides and graphite focused in the structures. But however, we haven't intersected the eastern side of the conductive package yet. Like Neil said, it's a very wide geophysical anomaly. So it looks very similar to the Patterson Lake corridor in that regard, with these, several kind of stacked conductive anomalies that we're testing. So definitely got to go back and try and delineate the width and follow up on some of these pretty significant structures we intersected.
Okay. And Neil or Sean, could one of you explain to the audience the importance of intersecting the eastern edge of that conductor? It sounds like you've kind of intersected the western edge. Why would it be important to be able to intersect both edges?
Yeah, I'll take that one. When you look at the location of other uranium deposits that are located on the Patterson Lake corridor, you'll note that they don't occur like in the middle of the conductive corridor. They're usually along the edges of the corridors. For whatever reason, that seems to be the place to look. Some people have thought that it's kind of where that interface between a softer rock type and a harder rock type are located. That contact is important because that'll be the focus of any sort of alteration and structure to go through. So having not drilled yet the eastern side, we feel like that's a pretty significant target to be followed up on phase 2.
Okay. And were you able to find areas or rock types where you did have like sort of the harder rock type contrasting the softer rocks, or the more maybe brittle rocks, the ones that would deform more easily?
Yeah, I mean, we on the west side, we clipped the western boundary of the corridor, and a couple of other holes found those harder rock types as well.
Okay. What, I mean, in your opinion, Neil and Sean, get you to both chime in. What areas, I guess, excited you the most? You were able to do 13 holes. Are there certain areas more than others where you think the focus should be to follow up on? Neil, I guess maybe I'll start with you and then we can go to Sean.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of what we just explained, that eastern side of the conductive corridor. And that's right where that bright spot is located too, which seems to be a key ingredient for that geophysical lookalikes for other deposits in the Athabasca Basin. So having not yet tested that eastern side, and even that eastern side seems to have, really subtle alteration that seems a bit more significant compared to other holes along the trend. So that would be the area that I'm most interested in for sure.
Okay, Sean, what about yourself?
Yeah, likewise with that. In some of those eastern holes, we were starting to get into a little bit more structure as well, coupled with that, moderate alteration. So that's great to see. And then in addition to that, holes 9 and 11 down to the southeast along the corridor. Those holes had some of the better structures that we intersected, upwards of 10 meters thick in drill hole length, large shear zones overprinted by brittle faulting, and definitely indicators of fluid movement through those with some clay and remobilized graphite and sulphides in there too, which could potentially act as our reductant for the oxidized uranium fluids. So some pretty significant structure down to the southeast and along the eastern edge of that bright spot to follow up on.
Okay, and I don't want to make this interview too technical, but maybe there will be a lot of people watching are not technical or not geologists that might not be familiar or know exactly what you mean when you say shear zones, and when you talk about reactivation. Are you able to explain that maybe in simple terms for people so you kind of understand what you're looking for? And if we can bring up some of the slides, some of the core boxes if you want, Sean, if you think that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Wes, bring up the core 9, the overview, that one. That'll probably help. There we go.
Yeah. So in general, when we're talking about shear zones, like I said, these rocks are billions of years old. Shear zones form deep in the crust. So these rocks are under an immense amount of pressure and high temperatures when they're buried deep. So if you impose any kind of strain on the rocks, they're going to behave ductily. So they're going to be plastic in nature. They're going to stretch and deform in that sort of manner. So we get these early shear zones. In the photo, you can see there's about a 10-meter shear zone there that's been overprinted by a brittle fault. So now, as these rocks are exhumed further up into shallower crustal levels, they cool off, not as high a pressure, and so they kind of solidify and crystallize. And if you impose some more strain on those rocks, at this stage, they're gonna crack and break open, brecciate and fracture, and deform in a brittle matter. So in the photo there, you can see this early ductile shear zone that's been overprinted by a brittle fault. So that's what's labeled as the fault core in the photo.
Okay, and I think it's sometimes probably hard for people to think about rocks as being ductile, but I guess it's important for people to understand that things don't always, the way things behave on the surface is not how they necessarily behave when they're, way underground under huge amounts of temperature and pressure. Things behave very differently, correct?
Absolutely.
Right, Sean, and as those rocks that might be a little more ductile, much deeper in the surface or below the surface at higher temperatures, as those get pushed up from tectonic activity, that's when they can become brittle and fracture. And as Neil and I covered extensively in our last video, it's those fractured pathways that create space for fluids to flow through, and that's very key towards the uranium deposition event. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Those fractured and broken out zones, like you said, they create the accommodation space and essentially, the highway for fluids to come up or down and hopefully mix in the correct chemical conditions. Like I had mentioned, having the graphite and or sulphides there gives us the chemical conditions, but as far as physical conditions go, those reused and reactivated structures are exactly what we're looking for.
Okay. And Wes, can you bring up the zoomed in version of Core 9 on the fault zone, please? The zoomed in fault, please. There's the second slide. The other one, sorry, the next one, Wes, with the really broken up rock in it. That's the one. So, guys, correct me if I'm wrong. The top right there, that really black part, that would be the high graphite bearing rock. And then Sean, maybe can you speak to the significance of some of the quartz veining we're seeing on the bottom there in some of that faulted rock and what that implies?
Yeah, for sure. So like you said, John, up in the kind of the top right of the photo, you can see that dark gray black material. That's all graphitic clay that's been structurally controlled. So it's coming up along those fractures and healing a breccia in that case. And so you can see all those white quartz veins. They're coming through at different angles and cross-cutting the original fabrics in the rock. So that's a key, that they are relatively late in the deformation here. So those are the types of features we're looking for. We want extension, so meaning things, popping open and creating that space. So in this situation here, the shear fabrics have been overprinted by this faulting, and we have zones of extension that have allowed fluids to come up and precipitate that white quartz. So they create complex networks and fluid pathways to come up. So this is kind of what we're looking for in a physical term. But rather than white quartz, we're hoping for high-grade uraninite.
Okay, so essentially, success means finding like rock types like this, but instead of the quartz filling the void spaces, we want the U308 mineralization in there.
Absolutely. So that's just what we're looking for in a structural sense. This structure has been, reworked a few times. You can see different generations of quartz and other alterations like the clay, and then the graphite coming up as well. So lots of really good looking structure like this in the basement.
Okay, and thanks for that explanation, Sean. So I think the big key takeaway that probably we need people to understand is, again, this is all evidence of the right type of rocks, the right type of mineralization in terms of the graphite and the sulfide as the key ingredients you need to find a uranium deposit. And you have successfully found that in your first phase 1 drilling program.
Yeah.
Okay. So phase 2, walk us through phase 2 and what that looks like. Do you know when you might be back in the field, as a follow-up diamond drilling, and how is that going to look, phase 2? Walk us through that.
Yeah, I'll take that one. We've got a lot of trends on the Warrior trend, a lot of target areas that we can follow up on, partly from our phase 1 success. There's areas obviously that we just talked about that look really interesting. We can follow up drilling in those areas. And on the Warrior trend, there's other targets that we didn't, from phase 1, that we didn't even get a chance to drill yet. So there's a couple of areas where we need to go back and test. So you were talking about timing as well. And this would be best done when everything's nice and frozen. So looking towards end of January, February, when the ground is nice and frozen, to hit up these targets.
Okay, and the nice thing is John's working hard right now to make sure you got lots of money to drill, right?
Absolutely. The more meters in the ground, the better.
Yeah. I'm just impressed, and I think it's important for people to remember the sense of scale here. The fact that the Warrior trend itself is quite large. We're talking double-digit kilometers. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, at any point. Double-digit kilometers, like you're only able to put in 13 holes on that first drill program. That is a large space to cover, and you still have I believe what you've termed the Bronco trend, the Thunderbird trend, both of those trends are still there for you to explore. So that has to be a challenge. It's both an opportunity and a challenge. Maybe walk us through, how do you decide how many holes to put where and how closely you, like, that's got to be a challenge, and that's not a straightforward answer. How do you, maybe for people to understand your thought process behind, where you put the holes and how many holes you put in certain areas. Not an
Yeah,
easy
it's
question,
very
I
much
know.
a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much a challenge. We face a bit of a struggle with wanting to get as much information as we can from the Warrior trend, and we're learning a lot, and we're going to learn a lot more in phase 2. But then on the flip side, we have these other targets that we need to focus on as well, and we can't focus on all of them. So my thought process is that we should be testing at least 1 to 2 holes on those other trends as well. The drawback of only a few holes is that it just gives you a little peek, and maybe you don't get the right area, but you can definitely learn a lot from just a couple of holes. And if you do them on the best looking targets on those trends, then that can tell you right away if you want to stick to that trend or maybe focus on a different one. And it might be that the Warrior trend is the best looking one of the bunch, or we might change our focus later on. And that's one of those sort of it'll be sort of a direct, the direction of our exploration will be directed by what we learn from the drill core, really.
Yeah, really learn as you go, right? You can kind of make a plan, but as the drill hole data comes in, you just sort of adjust as you go. Right. Yeah. Okay. Neil, I don't think it went into our last interview, but I know offline before we had talked about carbonatites, very rare sort of mineralization, and you were wondering if you were going to find it on the western side of the Clearwater domain. My understanding, as you had explained it to me, was, it's a rare rock type that is found on the eastern side. I'm just curious, did you end up finding any carbonatite?
We did, actually. On our last hole, we intercepted not a lot, but it was definitely there. And yeah, like I said, it's a bit of a rare, unique rock type, and the only confirmed occurrence in Saskatchewan is in the southwest Athabasca Basin on the Patterson Lake corridor. It would be northeast of the Arrow deposit. So, and I think northeast of the Spitfire zone that Purepoint, Cameco, and Orano are looking at. And it's not directly related to uranium deposit, but it's sort of a little clue as to the geology and the history of the region. In a very general sense, carbonatites intrude in a crustal scale rifting event. So this is a rock type that's igneous. It gets intruded right around where a continent is trying to divide. So that's a really significant piece of information, because we don't know exactly when these carbonatites were intruded, but it's possible that they could be a piece of evidence that shows that the processes of mineralization linked to uranium might be related to these carbonatites. Who knows? It could be this crustal scale rifting. The big picture that gets me excited is that is a plumbing system. It's a pathway for fluid to come through. And that's sort of this big picture scale that I think we're going to find out as we do research going forward, and how they fit into the picture in the southwest Athabasca Basin that, like Sean mentioned, hasn't seen a lot of research. It's definitely not well known. All of the mineralizing processes compared to the eastern Athabasca Basin that's been looked at far more in detail over the years. So having these carbonatites on the east side and on the west side now sort of puts another pin in that Clearwater mirror theory that we have, that these sides of the same of the domain are linked.
Okay. So I want to move on to the Gunnar Project, because I think that deserves some attention as well. But just before we close, I think in summary, when it comes to what success looks like in phase 2 drilling, I mean, in phase 1, you've successfully identified the same rock types, or the rock types that you were looking for, similar to what exists in the Patterson Lake corridor. You found that. You're still looking for the eastern edge of the conductor, but you have verified the conductors there. So that is all successful. Would it be fair to say that success in phase 2 would be trying to find, say, more strong alteration that would tell you you're starting to get close to a mineralized uranium zone? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the biggest things we're hoping to kind of vector in onto is these substantial zones of hydrothermal alteration associated with the structures. So the structures look good. We can kind of link them up between holes. They are significant, tens of meters thick, as I said. So following up on those, but that coupled with these extensive zones of hydrothermal alteration, clays, dravite, obviously, pink quartz veins that indicate radiation damage, those types of things that, are relatively typical of a uranium deposit halo. In basement uranium deposits, the halo is a lot smaller. So to kind of vector in on that is difficult, but that's really what we're hoping to see, I think, is, some more of these structures, coupled with a lot more hydrothermal alteration and high-grade uranium.
Okay, and just to qualify your statement there, Sean, when you say the halo is a lot smaller, you're comparing that to halos at more of, say, the northeastern Athabasca Basin deposits that have a sandstone cover, and the halo, because the sandstone is a very permeable rock, you can get a very large halo above the deposit. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. Yeah, that's precisely it. For example, around the Phoenix deposit that Denison Mines has, or Cigar Lake, the alteration halo around those in the sandstone is significant. Whereas, looking at Arrow or some of the other basement hosted ones, it's a lot more discreet. So
yeah,
hoping to get in on that.
Your job is obviously a lot more difficult because of that. And I mean, again, just to emphasize to people, like, the sense of scale, you are playing in a very large area, but hopefully phase 2, you guys find that stronger alteration, and that the follow-up from there, I think, hopefully gets you into mineralization. But I think it's important for expectations management for people to understand, again, not necessarily phase 2 are going to be drilling into that 25% U3O8, but hopefully success looks like, finding that stronger alteration, and that's going to help really vector in on, a potential mineralized zone.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so let's switch to the Gunnar Project. This is something that Standard Uranium picked up this year, so it's a fresh project, and already right out of the gate, it was recently press released that you have identified off-scale radiation from mineralized samples that you've taken at surface. So that's a great start. I think one of the natural questions that a lot of people ask is, for a project like this, it's kind of in an area, the Gunnar mine was obviously a previous mine, so other people have worked this area. So the natural question becomes, why do you think you can find mineralization where other people haven't in the past, or have maybe had limited success? And I mean, obviously you're off to a really good start, but Neil, maybe you can walk us through the thought process on this project, and why you think Standard Uranium might be successful here where others, the previous property owners, weren't able to find what they were looking for.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, you outlined a little bit of a history of this area. It's in the Beaver Lodge Uranium District, which is Canada's first uranium mining district. The mines here go back to the 40s, 50s, 60s, and a lot of work was done primarily north of us. So our project, the Gunnar Project, is right at the northern edge of the Athabasca Basin. And it's where the sandstone just comes right on top of those basement rocks. And those basement rocks is what the explorers in the Beaver Lodge district were looking at. So our area is just a little bit to the south of where most people were looking. And when people were looking in the Beaver Lodge district, they didn't know about Athabasca Basin uranium deposits. They knew that there was uranium in the area, in those basement rocks, but these like major deposits like Cigar, MacArthur with hundreds of million pounds of U3O8 weren't known about. The deposits in the basin north of us, you know, they're vein hosted. They're a little bit of a different beast. They haven't proven up to be quite as large. So what we're finding at the south end is indications that this is more of an Athabasca Basin style uranium deposit. We're seeing that because there's uranium in the sandstone rock, and the first explorers that really caught onto that idea was a company, SMBC. This is a predecessor of Cameco, and they at that time in the late 70s, early 80s, had their eye on Athabasca style uranium, and they were running this exploration model where they were drilling these targets right next to the surface uranium that we found, and they were on the right track. So they were finding elevated uranium in the basement rocks, in these graphite-rich, chlorite-rich, sulphide zones, the exact rocks that we're targeting at the other side of the Athabasca Basin at Davidson. So this is one of those key ingredient pieces where that exists here. The other key ingredient is elevated uranium in the basement. So that's what I'm really going for on this project, and why I like it. There was another operator between 2006 and 2008. That's Canalaska Uranium. They did work in this project area. A lot of it was regional, airborne work, ground geophysics, and they put a few holes in every one of those targets. So it's one of those things that we talked about, the approach where do you focus on one zone or do you spread out and hit every single target? And they seem to have that mindset where they would put one hole in every single target, maybe a couple holes. So I feel like we've got a lot of really good information from SMDC, and then some more really good targeting information from Canalaska. And now we've got, you know, 2006 and 2008 was very hectic in the uranium business, lots of money flowing in, and not a lot of time to think about these targets. So we've got time to put our thinking caps on, put these in a 3D model, and really have a good targeting effort for these projects where we're having success, and compile all that data digitally and have a really concerted effort in these areas that look really good.
Okay, Neil, would it be fair to say that the mineralization that you've encountered to date would be what you would call that so-called nested uranium that's sort of higher up in the sandstone, and you would be more predicting that to be indicative of a larger deposit somewhere in the general area nearby at a deeper depth? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, so it's what they call in other deposits perched mineralization, where you've got the main mineralizing system right at the contact between the sandstone and the basement. So it's an unconformity deposit. And then what we're aiming is that unconformity and into the basement. But then you also often have not a lot of mineralization in the sandstone, but sometimes you have fault zones that extend up into the sandstone. And on those fault zones, you've got little pods of uranium here and there. They don't amount to much, but they give you a clue that there's something bigger possibly nearby. And I think that's what we're seeing here. At a few of these projects, there's fairly significant uranium on what appear to be structures that I'm thinking are related to a basement hosted unconformity style uranium deposit.
Okay. And I believe in your presentation, you do have a few conductors nearby, right, where you located the mineralization that could be potential sources, say deeper underground. So that obviously looks promising.
Yep, exactly. On what we're calling the Java target, these are what I was talking about, a few uranium anomalies that were found by SMDC in the drill holes. And at the Sky target area, some of those conductive targets aren't yet tested at all. So nearby that, what we're thinking is the perched mineralization up in the sandstone.
Okay, and maybe one last question on the Gunnar Project. You know, looking at the map on your corporate presentation, like you're literally in the middle of a lake. So obviously this is probably something that you're drilling in the wintertime. What does that look like for logistics for you to actually get to site and be able to do the work effectively, you know, and still keep
Yeah,
the
it's
cost
actually,
reasonable?
yeah, not a problem at all. We are benefiting from a winter road that comes off of the main highway that goes from, you know, down south up to Uranium City. That's the main ground connection that that city has to the rest of the province in the wintertime. And this project has a road that connects from that highway all through our project and then up to the Gunnar mine. And that Gunnar mine is being reclaimed by SRC, funded by provincial and federal governments. And it's probably going to be a reclamation project that goes on for the next 10 years. So this year, they're planning to have an ice road go right next to all three of our target areas in March. So that's going to make access to our targets just really simple this year. And we hope that that's going to be a fairly simple process for drilling logistically. And in terms of it being on the lake, for a mining scenario, because we're going to be targeting that basement portion, any future mining scenario would be likely an underground mining scenario. And underground mining scenarios next to a lake, it works in other mining projects such as Eagle Point on the eastern side of the Athabasca Basin. It's currently being mined under, I think it's Wollaston Lake. So we don't see that being a huge issue for us in terms of long-term view on this project.
Okay. Well, that was a good update on Gunnar. So it's really cool that the company ended up having two, you know, targets that are showing potential, you know, right off the hop. So it's obviously exciting time to be a shareholder at Standard Uranium. We're drawing on probably close to an hour here, so maybe Neil and Sean, I'll get to John last, but Neil and Sean, any lasting comments you want to leave with people, or what are you looking forward to most in the next 6 months, or what has you most excited? Sean, we'll start with you. You have honors here, your first time on the show.
Right on, thanks. Yeah, so really, like, this first drill program at Davidson just went off without a hitch. It was great. Everybody we used and the entire team was awesome. I can't wait to get back up there and drill some more. I did a little bit of rare earth and uranium exploration north of Uranium City earlier in the year. So really excited to get back up there to Uranium City. It's beautiful up there, and start looking for some of this kind of classic unconformity related mineralization. Obviously having off scale at surface is awesome. Lots to follow up on there. And in addition to that, getting over to our eastern properties too. So really excited for the year ahead, and to get drills spinning and start pulling rocks out of the ground and in the southwest and the northern Athabasca Basin.
Right on. And Neil, what are you
Yeah,
thinking? What has you most excited?
Exactly like Sean's saying, exploring with the drill bit is very exciting. We get a lot of very valuable information from drilling, and it's the only way to find a deposit is with a drill bit. And being able to finance in at this time is amazing, and be able to spend that money on possibly 2 drill programs back to back in the next 6 months is just fantastic. You know, we're really looking forward to exploring these projects. So to have that ability to finance and execute in a fairly short amount of time is really good. So kudos to Jon for leading that front on financing.
Yeah, I mean, you guys as geologists are really in an enviable position, because there are other companies out there that have been established longer that do not have the budget that you have to work with, to play around and drill and find uranium. So yeah, that's obviously a testament to how well the company has set itself up. So John, I wanted to obviously end with you for your closing comments, but one question I had for you, and I think this is a very important part of being the leader of a company, a CEO, is the team that you build, that you put together, because it obviously can't be a one-person show. From the executive level down to the folks doing the drilling and in the field work. How happy are you with how things have gone and the team that you've built? And do you think you have all the pieces in place right now to be successful at your various projects? Let's hear your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, thanks for teeing that up, John. That's a really important question to ask. When I, put this company together back in 2017, we had a number of things we really wanted to move forward with. And that is, when you are trying to raise money, the investor will want to know a number of things. Do you have a quality project? And yes, we had the Davidson River project, under an option agreement. So that gave us our first start. Next thing was to assemble a quality team. We needed to get, geologists and executives that the investment community would believe in. We managed to lock down Neil McCallum shortly after the company was started, and then Garrett Ainsworth came on a few months later. And with those two on board, I was able to raise money in 2018 and get the geophysics done. As we approached our go public and our capital raise there, we were able to pick up Sean Hillacre, Garrett Ainsworth, new one from NextGen, as well as Galen McNamara, and adding those two to our team really gives us a nice rounded out portfolio of guys who've been working in this region, who've seen the rocks on this side and have got excellent experience. And our shareholders are really supportive of that. And the third part of what I was trying to do is really gather a strong, supportive group of shareholders. I started by going after who I thought were the top uranium funds globally. We locked in Sachem Cove in our first financing, and then we brought in L2 Capital with Marcelo Lopez, and then Tribeca with Guy Keller, then Terra Capital with Bond Group. So it's been, once we had those groups supporting us, it really gave the investment community, something to look at. How can a company of this size have quality investors like that? And that really helped us raise further capital. And I'm really happy with how things have progressed. We did a nice capital raise a few months ago, oversubscribed. We're coming back to the market this week, and we've already going to pass through the amount we wanted to raise in one day. So that tells us that our shareholders are happy, the market's happy. We built a fantastic team. Our projects are really good. In 2021, we're going to enter that year with great projects and a full bank account to go after and explore those projects. And that's what our shareholders want to see. And with great work on our geological team, we're gonna make a discovery. And it's going to be people are going to be talking about for years. I'm really proud of the guys we have and what we're doing.
Well, if that doesn't get you fired up as a shareholder, I don't know what will. So, I've disclosed this in a previous interview, but I am a shareholder of Standard Uranium, and I just want to extend my thanks to all of you, the three of you, of course, and the whole team that put in the work so far. I think everything is going really well, and I do think you are. There's a lot of other companies out there that would probably be envious of the position that the company's in. So, kudos to all of you. And again, thank you for your time, John. I know especially yourself with this capital raise announced, you're going to be really busy. So, I think it's great that you've taken the time to come out and give everybody an update, share your thoughts. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Sean. Really good to hear from you as well. Providing some color to and depth of experience and explaining some of the things that you were able to uncover. Hopefully that helps people understand some of the success that you've had with phase one, and that success will be continued with phase two. So gentlemen, thanks again. It's a pleasure. I'm sure we'll have you on either individually or collectively again in the not too distant future. So, until then, stay healthy, stay safe.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
And we look forward to your upcoming event where we'll be presenting as well. So big plug out for that. I can't wait to share a story with your shareholders for that too, and your followers.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks for reminding me, John. That's good. Yeah, keep an eye out. The Virtual Investor Day conference is coming October 20th and 21st, I believe. I wouldn't get those dates wrong. And Standard Uranium will be presenting.
That's right.
Right next to another uranium company, Encore Energy. So yeah, look, check that out if you haven't already. Make sure you sign up. So thanks again, gents, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.